I'm more of a visionary. Like I might not be the one that's building the tech, but I know specifically what the market needs. It wasn't like a one moment thing. It was like over time. And it started from, scaling my previous company and being in the very small subset of women, one, as a woman, but also a Black woman who has raised venture capital. And then two, as a woman who has who has scaled a company beyond $1 million, because only 1.7% of women have done it. And so you get into this little bubble where everyone's trying to tokenize you. Come speak at this, come do that, da, 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 da. And it's just like, I'm tired of hearing my own story. And also I'm tired of hearing everybody else's story that we keep recycling. And the other thing was, I'm like, why don't we have more women represented here? And what I saw was we weren't moving women through the pipeline to get to that space, to be able to get to the moment where they are building scalable businesses, where they are doing something. And when I looked into the data, the biggest problem that I saw, even though we continue to tell founders that the issue is you're not getting capital for your businesses, but 9 out of 10 times, capital is not the problem. It is traction. Traction is the fucking problem. No one owes you a check. What they owe you is if you've done some dope and you've gotten demand from the market and you're able to say, look, I don't need this check. We're going to hit numbers regardless, but this will add fuel to the fire. That's when it becomes an opportunity, but no one owes you anything. And so I realized we were perpetuating this story that, the way you'll scale is if you go get a check from an investor. No, that's not how it works, And when I looked even deeper, the issue is that women make up 40% of entrepreneurs, but we only constitute 4% of revenues. That's the problem. We're not able to get over a hump. And I hate when people take things out of context. The first thing is when we talk about the capital conversation, especially when it comes to institutional capital, is problematic because we zone in and zoom in on one thing and then forget about the holistic picture. The holistic picture is that there's like 0.004% of people that get access to venture capital. Of that, 2% goes to women. Is that a problem? Absolutely. But holistically speaking, it's not accessible for most people. And then we come up with things like, Black female entrepreneurs are starting companies at a higher rate. Yes, cool. But also it's because they don't get upward mobility in corporate settings because they are othered. And then outside of that, when they are starting companies, Black female entrepreneurs are the lowest performing group of women founders. On average, we're doing around $24,000 in revenue a year in our businesses. That's a problem. So that's where Get Shit Done came from. It was a collection of experiences being tokenized, hearing about these really sob stories about female entrepreneurs not being able to scale successfully. I'm like, because we're looking at the surface and not trying to remedy the system. Because the fear for founders becomes, if I drop one thing, everything might fall. And it's being able to have that confidence and know how to navigate and say, actually, this is what I need to get focused on right now so I can get to the next level. Like what my coach tells me is like, you need to get over one mountain in order to get to the next one and climb the next one. So that's really, we provide proprietary frameworks that helps our founders get focused on the right things that enables them to build that traction.
Okay, so that is a gem, and I'm sure you're looking for jewels in terms of people who are coming into your program, but who are your best customers? Like, who are the best clients? Who are the best founders? Who are the best people for your program?
The definition of what traction is there's a few things that can define it. So the first is always going to be revenue. Having revenue in some, even if you have one customer, like if you were able to show that there was some demand, what we do is one, our company, we have an Accelerator program, and we're about to roll out a traction membership community. But the number one thing that we do best and who we serve best is Get Shit Done helps those that already have something that we can help you accelerate. But if you don't, we're not necessarily an incubator. We're not necessarily the best served to help you get it off the ground. What we're best served at is helping you once you have it. Most women get stuck. That's where we serve best. So our best clients and our best customers are really the ones who already have some form of traction, whether that's revenue, whether that's users. It doesn't have to be a ton. It's just that you've already put it out in the market and you've gotten some feedback. It could be a dope piece of technology. We have founders who are in our Accelerator program right now that don't necessarily have customers yet, but they've tested it and they piloted it. They've gotten investment in. They have built this dope proprietary piece of technology. That's traction. They've already done a lot of the work. So for us, where we really, really serve female founders best is when you already have something that we can help you scale.
I know you have your hand in, the founder's cookie jar, the investor cookie jar, the accelerator cookie jar, and maybe just like essentially becoming a hub here in the New York City area for tech and VCs. But what role, in your own words, do you see yourself playing in the local tech ecosystem?
I would say we're curators of access. So the issue with the entrepreneurial ecosystem in general is that there's so much happening, but it's all happening in silos. And it's such a missed opportunity. Like, there's so many people that are like, we're going to be the champions over here for women entrepreneurs. But everyone's kind of just doing it themselves. And it's just like, I don't have any interest of doing this by myself, because it's not going to happen if we each try to do it individually. What I care about it, and what I'm also infamously known for people who know me well, is I'm a connector. I know how to curate connections very well. That is one of my superpowers. Literally, I think in connections. If I'm having a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, I need this, da-da-da. If I can't help them, I'm thinking of a resource, or I'm thinking of someone I can connect them to. My brain already functions that way. So basically, Get Shit Done is a map of how my brain operates and how I think that the ecosystem needs to be able to operate together. So we curate that access. So instead of us saying, we're going to just create all this that you can use and it's just going to be Get Shit Done, it's like, no. We're going to provide you the things that we're good at. We're good at helping you get traction. But if you need other stuff, whether that is, we can introduce you to investors. They don't need to be our investors. They don't need to be, if you need crowdfunding, like, we partner with those people. So we then become a hub for you to then go to. But we're not trying to do it all ourselves. So we're curators of that access and connections. I mean, I really like the fact that you're not invested in New York. And people in New York might hate that, but whatever. The end of the day, it's that the bias in terms of numbers, like, they have like reports on this, where the capital comes from. In the US, the number one is obviously California. You have Silicon Valley. That's the number one hub. The second is New York. There's so much exorbitant capital. Like, I tell founders a lot, the issue is not the capital. There is an exorbitant amount of capital. I have friends starting funds every other day, it feels like. I'm getting that's why I'm connected to so many like VCs and investors who they're trying to fill their pipeline, and they know that we get founders to a point that they're ready for the capital to be deployed there. The issue is not the capital. The issue is founder readiness, because it goes back to, what does it look like to be in a position to get institutional capital or to get capital from an angel investor? You need to have something to show for, because it needs to be fueled with a fire. You need to have already figured something out. They're not meant to come in to help you start the fire. That's not where investor dollars are best spent. So when it comes to New York, I think there's such an opportunity for founders who are here to raise capital. The issue obviously becomes access to networks. So one thing that I constantly say is, like, everyone needs to identify their privileges. There's two that I have that I speak publicly about. Is the first is, I went to a fancy undergrad, one of the top schools in the world. Did I come for money? Absolutely not. Did my family invest in my previous companies and any of my companies? Absolutely not. They gave me a hug and they said, good luck, But as soon as I got into this fancy school, that opened up access to a network I wouldn't otherwise have had. And I can probably say the majority of our investments from my previous company, it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We can probably trace back the majority of those investments, somehow linking it back to University of Chicago. Somehow. Like that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I'm a light-skinned Black woman. So I've become very ambiguous in certain rooms, and I get kind of a pass because people are either like, oh, you're okay, Black person, or it's, well, I don't really know what you are, so okay, it's okay, you know? And I think those are things that we have to acknowledge, because if one of my darker sisters try to go in and do and have conversations maybe that I would have, she might not be received the same way. So I know that I can speak a certain way and it might not seem as, even though I am very aggressive, it might not seem as aggressive because those are the biases that exist in people's mind. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in New York. I think there's a lot of opportunity to raise capital here, but understanding that networks are the most important when it comes to raising capital. And outside of New York, I think that's where the biggest opportunity for investors, why it's exciting to hear that someone like you invested outside of New York, because so many amazing markets, like in the South, whether it's, you know, Atlanta, whether it's Memphis, whether it's Houston, like there's so many great founders there, but everyone's so like fixated on New York and California. I mean, everything we do is organic traction. Like we don't pay for marketing. I've never spent any money on marketing for Get Sh Done at all. Everything's organic. What I would do is figure out how can we get boots on the ground in these underserved markets, such as North Carolina, Memphis, or whatever, to serve those founders. Because we all organically already get the New Yorks, the Calis, the women that are used to, they're trained to look out for these types of resources. And what I noticed is over time, because before I even started Get Sh Done, I spent thousands of hours talking to, now it's hundreds of women at this point, over the course of, you know, it's almost 3 years now. And I even noticed there's a difference in language in these different markets. So for example, you will hear the terminology female founder being used way more in Cali, Chicago, in New York. But I noticed like in the South, there's a lot of women who have businesses and are founders, but they don't consider themselves founders. They'll say, I'm a small business owner, or I'm an entrepreneur, or like it's just a difference. So in itself, it's the context is different. So I think I would want to spend that money to learn more, but also get boots on the ground for how do we continually learn here and get the right people in place so that we can make an impact, because it's not one size fits all. We cannot approach founders in a Houston or a Dallas, even though Houston's the 4th largest city, you can't approach it the same as New York. It's just not. It's not one size fits all. It's get focused. And this is the funny thing. One of my favorite sayings is, I think I heard like TD Jake say this, is like, what you preach and what you teach is what you need to learn. And so I constantly say, like, to our founders, like, we hit them over the head. When they get into our accelerator, when they get into our community, we literally bash them over the head every day with focus, because that's where we see results. When they feel overwhelmed, when we look at their frameworks for how they hit traction goals, I always tell them, when you feel overwhelmed about one of your goals, it's because you added too much to it. So what ends up happening is founders will put so much on their plate, like, oh, it's not that big, but you have like on the plate these many different meals happening at once. Founders are visionaries. We can look ahead in such a beautiful way that no one else can. We can see so clearly, to the point where I tell people, I'm like, for where Get Sh Done is going, I can taste it, I can touch it, I can feel it every day I wake up. It is so unreal. Like, I know exactly where we're going, but the issue becomes that you have to do all the stuff before that, before you can even get there. So it's, how do you make sure that you're not trying to skip ahead and overwhelming yourself? You're like, I'm on, like, I see it, but it's like, you're not there yet. So what do you have to do right now to get there? This is what you got to focus on right now. You can't be everything to everybody. And it was even becoming so unapologetic for who we serve too. Where at first, and this is something I teach and preach all the time, I was like, well, I don't want to leave the women who are like trying to start companies, because we get those people who are like we had Female Founder Support Week where we did like a whole live conference last week. And we had one woman that was like a woman that said, you know, in Q&A, she was like, you know, well, do you guys have something for, you know, women who haven't launched yet, who are just kind of in idea phase? And I'm like, you know, we don't necessarily, but we don't best serve you, but here's recommendations for who can serve you. That's why, again, we're not trying to do it all by ourselves. it can't happen. But I had to get to the point where I got comfortable and unapologetic about that, because I even noticed where we saw the best results were for the women that we unapologetically serve. And that is, I mean, to this point, I can just say it like literally in my sleep, like we best serve women entrepreneurs who are building scalable businesses with the potential to reach $1 million in ARR and beyond. That is who we serve. And I'm so unapologetic about it. But before, I wanted to serve everybody, because I do believe that female entrepreneurs should have a fighting chance and should have more resources. But we have to start somewhere. And it always reminds me of Amazon. Started with books. Now they own your life. I mean, I consider entrepreneurs artists, right? I am really inspired by, if I'm on some like gonna run in generational wealth type of, vibe, which I mean, I'm always on that vibe. I'm inspired by how Jay-Z and Beyonce are approaching it, in terms of how they take their platform and so strategically make sure that they're making the voices of Black folks, putting it at the forefront and using their platforms. And that inspires me so much, because it also reminds me that in terms of what I'm building for Get Shit Done, it always ties back to, even though we want to move women through the pipeline towards scaling $1 million enough companies, just going to 1 million is not enough for me. It's not because 1 million sounds good. It's, what does 1 million mean? It means that you are now creating a crop of people who have generational wealth. You are now creating a crop of people who are participating fully in economic development. It is so much bigger than just saying, we're going to help women build $1 million enough companies because it sounds cool and it's lit. It's like, no, what does that mean long term? Because if you look at the self-made women's list, the majority of them, their wealth comes from dad, husband, or they are Rihanna or Serena Williams. So basically, you need to be a pop star or you need to be a bionic athlete for you to get this money. Like, this is so problematic. So for us, it's such a, and I'm such a systems thinker. So for me, it's so deep rooted in a system. How do we shift a system? It takes time. So I'm really inspired by Jay-Z and Beyonce, because they are systems thinker, even though the fact that they're so low key and they don't tell you their moves right out. Like, you'll hear a Kanye or a Kim Kardashian, and I think what they're doing is also important. They're more vocal about it, showing you their moves. But Jay-Z and Beyonce don't need to show you their moves. They just pop up and say, we here. And they're doing it in such an interesting way. And then I think of entrepreneurs as artists. So like, I'm really inspired by Lisa Price, Carol's daughter, Madam C.J. Walker, of course. Rihanna as well. Like, what does it look like to take your wealth and shift it and create more wealth for yourself? Because usually when you're in art, like the brand isn't necessarily, for her, she understood that as an artist, that's not where I'm going to create my wealth. That's not where I'm going to generate my wealth. It's really about, what's that longevity? How do I own the entire system? How do I own the logistics? How do I cut out the middleman? That's where you get wealth. And every single artist who has gotten wealthy, whether it's Jay-Z, whether it's Rihanna, whether it's whoever, Beyonce, it's because they figured out how to own so many different parts of the value chain. You can't just be one thing. You have to own the value chain. Oh, one more artist, because I sent you this too.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Leslie.
Yes.
Ryan Leslie. I love Ryan Leslie. He's genius. And so underrated, but I digress. There's so many. First of all, I came from a military family. By the time I was born, my dad had retired, but my mom we ended up moving to Houston for just 3 years for middle school. And while she went to law school. And the really interesting thing is I got super comfortable with starting over, because then for high school, I had to move back. And so I got really comfortable having to start over and be in environments and kind of navigate and make new friends. And from elementary to middle school to high school, like, that's your crew, right? Like, I didn't have that. I always had to start over. So I think the superpower that gave me growing up is I can operate in any environment. Like, I go on solo trips by myself for fun. Like, I could travel around. I was just in Brazil for New Year's by myself. Like, I'm okay in that, and I'm okay with meeting new people because I'm always curious. And also because my family is so mixed up, like, on both sides. Like, my dad's white, my mom's black. Like, both sides, most of the children married outside of their race. And so everyone's just, like, mixed up. So I think I just I just grew up, one, seeing such diversity, and then also coupled with the fact that I learned how to thrive in any environment. It's our methodology. It's our methodology for how we move our founders through. How do they actually move through it? And it's like their OKRs. Like, how do you get focused? And this methodology is like starting at your North Star. Let's start there. Where are you ultimately going? You work backwards. Okay, what do you want to do by the end of the year? But what do you need to do this quarter? And it helps them holistically to see, if I don't make this happen right now, that 2020 goal ain't gonna pop, and that North Star ain't ever gonna be achieved. And I've seen it every time we walk through this framework, our founders just take this sigh of relief, like, oh my God, not only do they sigh of relief, it's like this, I got this. Because they can see it so clearly. And then they're just like pumped up. And then if something doesn't work, they're like, okay, I can just go back to the framework and adjust and then just keep moving. Like it's Q2. This is the second day of Q2. One of our founders, we went over this framework for her for last quarter, and she didn't even realize. She was like, oh, I hit all my goals. Wow. Because it's subconsciously like she not only hit her goals, like she had exceeded some, because it held her accountable throughout the entire process. So sometimes you're not even really, you're moving. It trains you. It forces the habit to get you focused. And that's that is the core of what we do. The one thing that I would say that saved me, because I talk to our customers every single day, is as we have more momentum with everything we do and Get Shit Done, people keep hearing about the Accelerator. Like you said, you're like, I'm inundated with Get Shit Done stuff. So it's like, and that's like not, I mean, I have people out of Cali that tell me that. Like, it's, I hear this all the time, and we do that on purpose. But, at the end of the day, it's, I was like, okay, we'll just do the Accelerator and then we'll lead up to this. And I was going to give myself more time, but it was just like, we have women literally knocking down our door. Like, how do I become a part of this? I want to be like, they're either too early for the Accelerator or it's just not a good fit, but they still fit our criteria of who we best serve. And it's like, the only thing we have right now is the Accelerator. So I'm just like, wait, something has to give. So it was like, nope, this needs to roll out much quicker than we anticipated, because I'm a one-to-many founder. And if I want to be able to increase the 1.7% to 10% by 2030, that means we have to move much faster. And so what I saw is that there's these groups that have great intentions of wanting to serve, but not being very clear about why they're gathering. So one book that I'm obsessed with right now is The Art of Gathering. And she talks about this. She was like, what's your purpose for gathering? Stop trying to take templates and then you create your own. It's like, but no, instead of saying, I'm going to create a Facebook group or a Slack group, it's saying, but why, first of all, why are we gathering people here? And what's the intention? What do we want them to walk away with? And typically the ones that do it well have a focal point. Issue becomes, especially in women's group, because women are nurturers. We want to be for everybody. Come one, come all. And I'm like, no, don't come one, come all. Because we're not for you if you don't fit this criteria. However, love you, sis. I'm going to recommend you to this group over here that I think can best serve you. There's so many networking events. There's so much where it's just like, first of all, I hate when I have to wear a name tag. And nothing's wrong with the name tag. Like, that's okay. I get it. You're trying to, but I actually purposely, when I go to events, do not wear a name tag. So people are forced to ask me my name and like we're forced to talk to each other. But I think the intention is like, for Get Shit Done, what we care about so much is access. And I like that you guys are providing access to, groups, whether it's on the founder side where they're in markets that are typically ignored, or on the side of the investor where it's investors who are trying to get their feet wet that might not they're not privy to the game, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have access and get their feet wet. So that's what I really like about what you guys are providing, because it's approaching the system in a way where you're creating accessible points, because at the end of the day, who you guys are serving, they're needed in this ecosystem. The founders in these different markets are absolutely needed, because I'm so tired of just seeing in New York and Cali entrepreneurs, and I'm one of them. So I'm tired of just seeing myself. I'm also just tired of seeing the same type of investors. The ecosystem does better if it's diversified and if we have multiple voices so we can all rise together. So that's what I think I really like about, I like about what you guys are doing.
But Do you want to run a $1 billion company? Why or why not?
So this is so funny because I think you might have heard this at our last kickback, but Yvonne from New Age Capital, we went to this event, JP Morgan, Advancing Black Pathways, and Forbes 8 put on, and we were basically judging these founders pitch us. And the first thing I asked, they're like, be real, speak how you speak to these founders. And the first thing I asked this founder, I was like, are you about this life? Because what does it mean to scale a business successfully? What does it mean to bring on capital? Get Shit Done's a legacy company, so I don't plan on bringing on capital. If I do, it's a strategic partnership. But I ain't gonna have nobody tell me I have to exit within 5 to 7 years because we are attacking a system. We ain't no surface level shit. You can't do this type of work we do within 5 to 7 years. Like, it's really funny because like on my ceiling, I have a dollar bill and I just added all the zeros for $1 billion because that's the first thing when I wake up every morning I see. And the reason for me is it always goes back to access. And what does access mean long term? For me, it means generational wealth. And generational wealth is important to me because it's not just for me and my kids, it's also for my family. It's also for everybody else. You know, it means I know when I do well, because at a certain point, it is literally proven that after $75,000 a year annually in salary, people aren't any happier. You good, you know, and everything else is just added bonus. But what does it mean when you're able to acquire that level of wealth? For me, it means that I'm able to activate that in my family so we have longevity, that we're able to make strategic moves in terms of ownership, in terms of having a stake in this world. But even outside of that, I know that that means I get to activate it and really serve underrepresented communities that are important to me, whether it's Black people, whether it's women of color, or just other groups of people. Because again, it goes back to, it's not one size fits all.